For over 3,000 years, Egypt, it stood as the jewel of the ancient world, a land of endless deserts, a river that gave life, and rulers who claimed more than just mortal power. The Pharaoh, he wasn't a mere king, no. To his people, he was a living god, the son of Ra, the protector of Ma'at, the eternal link between heaven and earth. His voice carried the weight of eternity. His commands shaped the destiny of millions, and his monuments, they were carved not just for life, but for eternity. But behind the crowns of gold, behind the temples of stone, lay a darker truth. Pharaohs, they were still men. Men who hungered for power, who bled in war, who feared death like any of us. Their kingdoms rose with divine glory, but every empire, no matter how eternal it seems, must one day fall. Chapter 1. Children of the Gods. Long before the towering pyramids and gilded temples, before the sun god Ra blazed across the sky each morning, Egypt was a land ruled by men who were not merely mortal. No, they were believed to be children of the gods. The Pharaohs. They were the living embodiment of divine will, walking among ordinary people as mediators between heaven and earth. From the moment a pharaoh was born, his life, it was steeped in ritual and prophecy. Priests would gather, examining the infant for signs, interpreting dreams, proclaiming omens. This child was not just a prince, he was chosen by the gods, destined to maintain Ma'at, the delicate balance of truth, order, and harmony in the universe. The Nile's flooding, the fertility of the soil, the strength of armies, all were tied to his favor with the divine. One mistake, one failure could bring chaos, famine, or war. And yet, success could bless the land with prosperity and peace. Picture a young prince draped in fine linen, crowned with the symbolic double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, his tiny hands lifted in ceremonial gestures even before he understood their meaning. Every step, every ritual was a reminder that he was not merely human. From his first breath, the eyes of Egypt were upon him. Priests whispered that his words could command the gods themselves, that his gaze could bless the crops and protect the people from darkness. The earliest rulers, like Narmer, were venerated while still alive. Statues were carved to eternalize their likeness, and temples became places where ordinary Egyptians could feel the presence of a god walking among them. Pharaohs were portrayed larger than life, adorned with symbols of power, the crook and flail, the uraeus serpent, and the golden sun disk. Every detail reinforced the same truth: this ruler was divine. Yet, divinity came with an invisible weight. The people demanded miracles, victories, abundance. If the Nile failed to flood, if enemies invaded, if famine struck the land, the pharaoh's authority and his divine status was questioned. Every decision, every action was scrutinized as though the fate of the universe depended on it. Even the smallest misstep could be interpreted as a crack in the cosmic order. Being a god among men also meant isolation. No one could approach the pharaoh as an equal. Friends, advisors, even family were bound by ritual and fear. The child of the gods was both revered and lonely, carrying a responsibility that no mortal heart could ever fully grasp. He was expected to embody perfection in every action, every word, every thought. A mortal living with immortal expectations. In this age, the line between man and God blurred. The Pharaoh was worshipped not only for his power, but for what he represented: hope, stability, the promise of eternal life. Every temple, every pyramid, every obelisk was a testament to the belief that the ruler was divine. The world of men and the world of gods entwined through his presence. But even gods are not immune to the human world. The seeds of ambition, jealousy, mortality were already present in the hearts of these living deities. To be a child of the gods was a gift, but also a curse. It was a destiny filled with grandeur, yet shadowed by the relentless pressure of perfection. The Pharaoh would learn that power alone could not guarantee obedience, that divinity could not shield him from betrayal, and that even gods must face the consequences of their choices. In the eyes of the people, he was immortal, but in the heart of history, he was human. The age of the children of the gods had begun, and with it a story of divine ambition, earthly power, and the fragile balance between humanity and divinity that would shape Egypt for millennia.
Chapter 2. The Divine Throne. As the children of the gods grew into kings, the line between human and divine blurred completely. Pharaohs no longer merely represented the gods. They were the gods incarnate. Seated upon the divine throne, their will shaped not just politics, but the very essence of reality. To the people of Egypt, the Pharaoh's word could summon prosperity or famine. His gesture could bless or curse. His very presence was believed to hold the universe in balance. During the Middle and New Kingdoms, this belief reached its height. Pharaohs adorned themselves with symbols of eternal rule: the double crown, uniting Upper and Lower Egypt, the crook and flail, shepherd and ruler in one, and the uraeus serpent blazing on their brow as the embodiment of divine protection. Their temples rose like mountains of stone and gold, walls covered in hymns, statues immortalizing their faces, rituals repeating day after day to remind all Egypt that their ruler was divine. Perhaps no figure showed this more boldly than Akhenaten. He declared himself not just a king, but the living vessel of Aten, the sun's blazing disk. Temples were redesigned, art transformed, and hymns rewritten, all to proclaim that he was no ordinary man, but the God himself walking upon the earth. But being a god carried a burden heavier than any crown. The rising of the Nile, its floods that gave Egypt life, were seen as signs of the pharaoh's favor with the divine. Victories in war proved the god's blessing. Defeat? Defeat meant doubt, fear, rebellion. Every temple built, every statue raised, was both tribute and test. A test of whether the God upon the throne was worthy of eternity. Life on the divine throne was a performance without end. Ceremonies, festivals, grand processions, all carefully crafted to dazzle the people. Priests wrote hymns of glory. Artists carved the pharaoh larger than life, towering above mortals. Citizens knelt in rituals that blurred devotion with obedience. But beneath the golden mask, danger stirred. Rivals plotted, courtiers whispered, even family could turn against the god king. A sudden illness, a poor harvest, a lost battle, any crack in the image of divinity could tear it all apart. For a god who faltered was no god at all. And so the pharaohs lived in paradox, supreme, yet vulnerable, immortal in the eyes of their people, yet painfully mortal within themselves. The divine throne shone with glory, but in its shadows, the seeds of fragility had already begun to grow. Seeds that one day would shake the very foundations of Egypt. Chapter 3. The Golden Age. Egypt had reached its zenith. The Nile flowed with steady rhythm, the sun blazed across the eternal sky, and the pharaoh sat upon the throne as the unquestioned god-king. This was the golden age of ancient Egypt, an instant of wealth, of power, of brilliance, when the world itself seemed to bend to the will of the divine ruler. Along the banks of the Nile, cities thrived. Merchants bartered, artisans carved wonders from stone, scribes inked knowledge onto papyrus scrolls, and rising above it all were temples soaring into the heavens, walls alive with color, statues towering like giants. Chants filled the air, drums pounded in rhythm, and music echoed through streets where life and devotion intertwined. Pharaohs such as Thutmose III and Ramesses II pushed Egypt's borders farther than ever before. Victories in battle brought home treasures, slaves, and tribute from distant lands. Every conquest was proof of divine favor, every victory a reminder that the pharaoh was not just a king, he was cosmic order itself, made flesh. But Egypt's greatness was not only won by the sword. Art, literature, and science flourished. Papyrus scrolls recorded the secrets of the stars. Mathematics shaped monuments that still defy time. Jewelers crafted gold that shimmered like the sun, while artisans carved statues so lifelike they seemed ready to breathe. And at the heart of it all was the pharaoh, directing projects with divine authority, overseeing rituals, ensuring that every stone laid and every prayer spoken preserved Ma'at, the sacred balance of the universe. The people revered their god-king. Children were raised on stories of his divine bloodline. Farmers offered their finest harvests at his temples. Priests performed daily rituals, believing that their chants kept heaven and earth in harmony. To see the pharaoh was to see eternity itself walking in human form. Yet even in this age of brilliance, shadows lingered. Absolute power demanded constant vigilance. Ambition stirred in rivals, envy whispered in secret halls, and even family could turn against the god-king. A sudden illness, a poor harvest, a lost battle, any crack in the image of divinity could tear it all apart. For a god who faltered was no god at all. The Golden Age was magnificent, yet fragile. A shining peak balanced on a slender thread of faith. To the world, Egypt seemed eternal. Gods walked among men. The earth itself bowed before the brilliance of the pharaoh. But even the brightest sun casts a shadow, and beneath Egypt's radiant glory, forces of change, ambition, and decay were already gathering, quietly preparing to test the very idea of divine kingship.
Chapter 4. Cracks in Eternity. Even the most magnificent empires, they cannot escape the passage of time.
And Egypt's golden age, it could not last forever. The Nile still flowed, the sun still rose, but subtle cracks began to appear in the facade of eternity. The divine throne, once unchallenged, began to tremble. The very idea of the God-King, it wasn't as invincible as it seemed. Foreign invaders, Persians, Nubians, Libyans, each one tested Egypt's might. Temples, once symbols of eternal power, stood helpless. Even the greatest pharaohs found themselves surrounded. Rival claimants, ambitious generals, scheming courtiers, all circling like vultures. The God-King's image of perfection began to fray. And the priests? The priests who once bowed in loyalty. They grew powerful in their own right. They controlled temple wealth, commanded their own armies of followers, and sometimes even decided who should wear the crown. The pharaoh, the mediator between heaven and earth, suddenly found his authority challenged not only by men, but by the very institutions meant to uphold his divinity. Corruption seeped into the royal court. Endless feasts, lavish palaces, displays of gold. They couldn't hide the truth. Pharaohs were faltering. Famine, failed projects, lost battles, no longer seen as human missteps, but as proof that even gods could fail. Even the monuments themselves betrayed the truth. Temples decayed, statues crumbled, inscriptions, once carved to proclaim eternal glory, now stood as reminders that time erodes all. Pharaohs, who once walked among men as gods, faced the reality that immortality was only a symbol. Egypt still stood, yes, prosperous in parts, but the golden thread of unity was unraveling. Rebellions, invasions, betrayals, each one a fracture, each one a reminder. Gods walking among men were not invincible. These were the cracks in eternity, foreshadowing the fall yet to come. Chapter 5. The Fall of the Gods. For centuries, pharaohs walked among mortals as gods. Their power? Absolute. Their presence? Unquestioned. But time spares no one, not even those who claim immortality. The age of divine kings, was ending. Foreign invasions, once rare, became unstoppable. Persians, Greeks, and finally, Romans. Each cast a long shadow over the Nile. Pharaohs who once commanded armies and inspired fear, now struggled just to protect their borders. Cities that once gleamed under their gaze fell into ruin. Temples, those mighty symbols of order, became relics of a fading dream. Inside Egypt, the cracks widened. Priests, nobles, generals, all clawing for power. Intrigue poisoned the royal court. And the pharaoh, once untouchable, became just another player in the game. Even the people, once bound by awe and devotion, began to whisper doubts. They looked at their rulers, once gods, and asked, are they really? The burden of perfection, it became unbearable. Every failure, famine, defeat, corruption was no longer excused. It was proof that gods could fail, proof that divinity could be broken. And yet, in their fall, the pharaohs left something immortal. Pyramids, temples, inscriptions, monuments carved from ambition and vision. Their idea of divine kingship, it lived on, inspiring emperors and rulers across the world. The fall of the gods was not sudden, no. It was a slow unraveling, a reminder of one timeless truth, that even those who claim divinity are not immune to time. The gods walked no more among men. What remained was a civilization, a culture, and a story whispering through the ages. A story that says, mortality reigns over all.